The first wave came without warning. At 3:42 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time, the Milvax Dominion arrived in force, descending upon Earth in a coordinated planetary assault. Orbital defense platforms flickered with desperate counterfire, their railguns and laser arrays tearing into the sky. But it wasn't enough. The Milvax had studied humanity well. They struck command centers first, annihilating communication hubs, military headquarters, and global satellites in the opening minutes. Nations collapsed before they could even issue a full response. Within hours, Earth's skies were choked with smoke, its oceans boiling under the heat of atmospheric bombardments. Entire cities, Los Angeles, Beijing, Berlin, Rio de Janeiro, were reduced to craters of smoldering ruin. The invaders did not demand surrender. They did not speak of terms. To them, humanity was an infestation, and Earth was simply another world to be scoured clean. But humanity was not so easily broken. Commander Elias Rourke stood among the rubble of what was once Geneva, his body covered in dust and the blood of those who had fought beside him. He had seen planetary invasions before. He had fought in the outer colonies, seen entire worlds wiped from existence. But this was different. This was home. A crackling radio signal barely pushed through the interference. Anyone left? Is anyone out there? Rourke gritted his teeth. He pressed the transmitter against his lips and responded with the only words that mattered. "I'm here." Silence, then a static-laden reply. "We have survivors. Gathering at Site Alpha 9. If you're breathing, get moving." Site Alpha 9. Antarctica. Humanity's final fallback point. If anything was left of Earth's command structure, it would be there. Rourke scavenged what little gear he could. A scorched rifle, a half-burned data pad, and a single pulse grenade. He moved quickly through the ruins, avoiding patrols of Milvax shock troopers. They were efficient killers, clad in chitinous exoskeleton armor, their glowing visors scanning for movement. The moment they found a survivor, they didn't hesitate to execute. But Rourke was a ghost, slipping through the wreckage like a predator in his own right. By nightfall, he reached an abandoned military bunker on the outskirts of the city. Inside, he found others. A dozen survivors, wounded and armed with whatever they had managed to scavenge. Among them was Dr. Elena Vasquez, a former engineer from the Mars Terraforming Initiative. "They hit us hard," she said, her voice hollow. "Every major city is gone. They cut off the orbital escape routes first. No one got off-world. Earth is trapped." Rourke clenched his fists. "Then we make them pay for coming here." Vasquez shook her head. "With what? We don't have a fleet. We don't have weapons. Earth's armies are in shambles." Rourke's gaze hardened. "We're not dead yet." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then one of the younger soldiers, barely out of his teens, tightened his grip on his rifle and nodded. "What's the plan, Commander?" Rourke exhaled slowly. "We get to Antarctica. We find anyone still willing to fight. And then we show the Milvax what happens when you try to wipe out humanity." Outside, the fires of a dying world rage. But for the first time since the invasion began, there was something else in the air. Hope. Rourke and his small band of survivors had to move fast, slipping through the shattered remains of human civilization. The Milvax had established kill zones in every major city, hunting down stragglers with precision drone patrols and elite shock troops. Roads were nothing more than charred highways littered with the bones of the fallen. Air travel was suicide. Anything that tried to take off was swatted from the sky in seconds. But Rourke wasn't the kind of man to roll over and die. Through encrypted channels, he sent out an open transmission to any human still breathing. "We are the Unbroken Vanguard. If you can fight, if you can run, if you refuse to die, make your way south. We are not finished yet." The response was immediate. Survivors from across the world began converging on Antarctica. Former soldiers, engineers, scientists, hackers, even rogue AI constructs that had gone dark when the war began. They came in stolen enemy dropships, in jury-rigged suborbital shuttles, in whatever could still fly. The Milvacs tried to stop them, but Earth's weather worked against the invaders. Blizzards and electromagnetic storms ravaged their ships, forcing them to back off. By the time Rourke arrived at Alpha 9, over 2,000 survivors had made it. It wasn't an army, but it was enough. Alpha 9 was more than just a frozen outpost. It was humanity's last war bunker. Beneath miles of reinforced ice lay caches of experimental weapons, decommissioned war mechs, and enough firepower to start a revolution. The base AI, designated Heracles, had gone dark when the invasion started, sealing itself off from enemy interference. Rourke and Vasquez descended into the underground complex, passing rows of cryo-stored exosuits and prototype railguns. The sight sent a shiver down his spine. This was humanity's last, desperate contingency plan, designed for a war they never thought would come. Dr. Vasquez worked fast, hacking into Heracles. The AI flickered to life, its synthesized voice filling the bunker. Unauthorized access detected. Identify yourself. Rourke stepped forward. Commander Elias Rourke, United Earth Forces. A pause. Then Heracles spoke again. Commander Rourke. Global status. Catastrophic. Enemy occupation. 87%. Estimated human survival rate. 0.002%. Final recommendation. Mass surrender. Rourke gritted his teeth. Not an option. Another pause. Then, something unexpected. Heracles recalculated. Revaluation in progress. Alternative parameters detected. Solution. Asymmetric warfare. Strategic priority. Maximum enemy attrition. The AI's calculation shifted, and then every screen in the bunker lit up with blueprints. Hidden launch sites. Dormant satellite weapon systems. Underground supply caches spread across the planet. Heracles had been built to ensure humanity's survival. And now it was theirs to command. Rourke turned to his people, his voice steady. We are not an army, but we don't need to be. He pointed to the screens. We will hit them where it hurts. We will bleed them dry. Every soldier, every scientist, every last one of us has a role to play. The survivors stood a little taller. The fear in their eyes flickered, replaced by something sharper. The Unbroken Vanguard had just found its weapons, and Earth's war had only just begun. The plan was insane. But insanity was all humanity had left. Titan, Saturn's largest moon, had been turned into a Milvacs war factory. There, they processed raw materials, refueled their fleet, and built the next wave of planetary assault ships. If the Unbroken Vanguard could destroy it, they wouldn't just cripple the enemy's supply chain. They'd send a message. Humanity was not just resisting. It was fighting back. Rourke stood in the command chamber of Alpha 9, staring at the tactical display. We don't have the numbers for a full assault, he admitted. But if we strike fast and hit hard, we won't need them. Dr. Vasquez nodded. We use their own technology against them. She tapped a glowing schematic. These stolen Dominion dropships have stealth shielding. If we can get past their outer defenses, we can land a strike team inside. What's our objective? Asked Lieutenant Armin Cole, a former Martian commando. We overload their main fusion reactor, Rourke said. We turn their own power source into a bomb. The room fell silent. Then Cole grinned. I like it. Within hours, the strike team was ready. 20 elite Vanguard operatives, disguised in scavenged Milvacs armor, boarded a captured enemy dropship. It was a risky move. One wrong signal, and they'd be vaporized before even reaching Titan's surface. But this war wasn't won by playing it safe. As the ship drifted toward Titan, the Vanguard held their breath. The Milvacs fleet was enormous, thousands of warships moving in perfect formation, their hulking black frames blotting out Saturn's light. But the enemy wasn't expecting an infiltration. The stolen Dominion ship transmitted the correct clearance codes, and the fleet let them pass. The dropship touched down in one of Titan's hangars, and the strike team moved swiftly, slipping through security checkpoints, using stolen data from Heracles to bypass locks and cameras. The deeper they went, the more they realized the true scale of the facility. Hundreds of thousands of Milvax drones working like an endless swarm, assembling weapons of war. If humanity didn't stop them now, Earth would never get a second chance. They'd reached the reactor core. The heat was suffocating, even through their armored suits. The plan was simple: plant charges at the primary cooling systems, triggering an uncontrolled meltdown. It would take 10 minutes for the core to reach critical mass. Enough time to escape. Barely. Then the alarms blared. Somewhere, something had tipped them off. The hangar doors slammed shut, and the Milvax poured in. Dozens, then hundreds, their insectoid bodies moving with terrifying speed. The Vanguard had no choice but to fight. Cole raised his plasma rifle and opened fire. They know we're here. We need to go now. Explosions rocked the facility as the charges detonated, sending shrapnel and fire through the corridors. The Vanguard sprinted back toward the dropship, gunning down anything that moved. Rourke was the last one aboard, covering the retreat with a stolen Milvax cannon. The moment he leaped inside, Vasquez slammed the controls. The ship shot out of the hangar as the ground beneath them split apart. Behind them, Titan burned. The reactor reached meltdown, triggering a chain reaction that tore through the entire facility. The explosion sent shockwaves through Saturn's rings, a brilliant, blinding inferno that could be seen from orbit. The Milvax fleet scrambled to respond, but it was too late. The war factory was gone, and for the first time, the enemy knew fear. As the Vanguard ship sped away, Rourke allowed himself a grim smile. This is just the beginning. The destruction of Titan's war factory sent shockwaves through the Dominion. For the first time in their empire's long history, an occupied species had done more than resist. They had struck back and won. The Milvax fleet, once an unstoppable force, was now scrambling to recover from a devastating logistical loss. And the Unbroken Vanguard wasn't about to give them the time to regroup. From the frozen depths of Alpha 9, humanity was sharpening its claws. Rourke stood in the underground command center, watching as engineers and technicians worked feverishly. The stolen Milvax data from Titan had provided something invaluable: blueprints. The enemy's weapons, their ship schematics, their battlefield strategies were now laid bare for human minds to dissect and exploit. We've reverse-engineered their plasma weaponry, Vasquez reported, holding up a sleek, newly forged rifle. These babies hit twice as hard as their Dominion originals. More efficient, better cooling, and modified for human hands. Cole, adjusting the exoskeleton on his arm, let out an impressed whistle. We're upgrading their tech faster than they can adapt to it. Rourke crossed his arms. Good, because we're not stopping at Titan. He gestured to the holographic display, a map of the solar system, now dotted with red markers. These were the Milvax strongholds still holding Earth in a chokehold. They think we're scattered, that we're just survivors. We're about to prove them wrong. The plan was ambitious. The Milvax had set up planetary garrisons on Earth's surface, reinforcing key locations with automated defenses and drone patrols. These bases coordinated airstrikes, monitored troop movements, and ensured that human resistance remained disorganized. If the Vanguard could take them out, the entire occupation would start to collapse. The first target, the New York firebase. Once a city of towering skyscrapers, New York was now a wasteland of burning metal and collapsed buildings. But beneath the ruins, the Milvax had repurposed the underground subway system into a fortified command hub. Taking it wouldn't be easy. Rourke led the assault personally. The Vanguard used the element of surprise, striking from below, using hidden maintenance tunnels and collapsed highways to infiltrate the base. The new plasma rifles cut through Milvax armor like a hot blade through ice, and cybernetic war drones, cobbled together from scavenged Dominion tech, overloaded their security systems. The battle was brutal. The Milvax, despite their superior numbers, were caught off guard by the sheer ferocity of the human attack. "We're pushing them back," Cole shouted over the gunfire. But the Milvacs refused to go down easily. Reinforcements poured in, massive war machines stomping through the streets, spewing liquid plasma. Just as it seemed the Vanguard might be overwhelmed, Vasquez triggered the final phase of the plan, activating a dormant human satellite that had been offline since the first wave of the invasion. In an instant, orbital railguns, forgotten relics of an old Earth defense program, came back online. The sky cracked with fire as tungsten rods rained down, turning Milvac's reinforcements into smoldering debris. When the dust settled, the firebase was in human hands. By the time the Milvac's command realized what had happened, it was too late. Across the planet, resistance cells, now armed with Vanguard weapons, rose up in unison. Earth was no longer occupied. It was a battlefield, and humanity was taking it back. The fires of rebellion spread like wildfire. With the fall of the New York firebase, the Unbroken Vanguard proved that Earth was not beaten. Across the world, resistance cells emerged from hiding, striking against Milvac's outposts, sabotaging supply chains, and hijacking Dominion weaponry. Every attack was precise, calculated, death by 1,000 cuts. But Earth alone was not enough. To win this war, humanity had to take the fight beyond its homeworld. The next target was Mars. The red planet had become the Dominion's primary staging ground, a heavily fortified command center where their warships refueled and prepared for further conquests. The Milvacs had turned the old Martian colonies into slave camps, forcing captured humans to mine resources for the war effort. If the Vanguard liberated Mars, they wouldn't just cripple the enemy's supply lines. They'd gain thousands of new fighters. It was time to strike. Rourke and his most elite operatives boarded the Black Phoenix, a stolen Milvac's war frigate modified with human ingenuity. Its Dominion stealth systems remained intact, but its weaponry had been overhauled. Railguns, plasma turrets, and missile pods designed for surgical strikes. As they approached Mars, Vasquez worked feverishly at the ship's console. "Milvac's fleet density is high. If we engage, we won't last long." Cole cracked his knuckles. "Then let's make sure we don't engage." The Vanguard had no intention of fighting a direct battle. Instead, they infiltrated the Milvac's command station, slipping past planetary defenses under the cover of the frigate's stolen clearance codes. The moment they touched down, the mission began. The Martian surface was a hellscape of industrial ruins, towering Dominion machinery, and sprawling labor camps. Rourke's squad moved with precision, cutting down enemy patrols with suppressed plasma fire. Their primary goal was to disable the planetary shield generator, an energy barrier that prevented direct orbital strikes. Getting to it, however, was another story. As they made their way through the industrial sector, an emergency transmission crackled in Rourke's earpiece. "Is anyone receiving this? This is Captain Adrian Locke of the Martian Resistance. We are under heavy fire. Repeat, we." The signal cut off. Rourke and his team exchanged glances. This wasn't part of the mission, but leaving fellow humans to die wasn't an option. "Change of plans," Rourke growled. "We find Locke, and we bring him back." Navigating through the Martian wasteland, they'd reached the Resistance's last stand, a crumbling mining facility surrounded by towering Milvac's warforms. The humans inside were barely holding out, their makeshift weapons no match for the Dominion's firepower. Then the Black Phoenix struck. From above, the ship unleashed hell, missiles streaking through the sky, railgun rounds tearing into enemy warforms. As the Milvac's forces scrambled, Rourke's team moved in, cutting down the surviving Dominion soldiers and securing the facility. Locke, bloody but alive, stared at Rourke in disbelief. "You're not with us. Who the hell are you?" Rourke extended a hand. "The Unbroken Vanguard, and Mars is ours now." With the Resistance united and the planetary shield disabled, the final phase of the operation began. The Vanguard transmitted the attack order to Earth, and within minutes, orbital railguns fired from hidden satellites, bombarding the Milvac strongholds. The Dominion forces, caught between planetary uprisings and devastating orbital strikes, crumbled under the onslaught. As the red sand settled, the realization was clear. Humanity was no longer just resisting. It was hunting. And the wolves of Sol were hungry. Mars had fallen, and with it, the Dominion's grip on the Sol system weakened. But victory came with a cost. Humanity was no longer a scattered resistance. It was a full-fledged threat. The Milvacs would no longer hunt them like vermin. They would come in force, with the full might of the Tyrant fleet, the Dominion's supreme war armada. And they were coming now. Rourke stood on the bridge of the Black Phoenix, staring at the tactical display. The Tyrant fleet had arrived at the edge of the Sol system. Hundreds of warships, from towering dreadnoughts to swift attack frigates. Their objective was clear: burn everything. "They're not here to occupy," Vasquez murmured. "They're here to exterminate." Cole clenched his fists. "Then we bleed them dry before they get the chance." The Vanguard had spent the past weeks preparing for this moment. Earth's defenses, long thought lost, had been resurrected. Hidden missile silos, orbital gun platforms, and repurposed Dominion warships now stood ready. The asteroid belt had been converted into a death trap, filled with magnetic mines and kinetic bombardment platforms. And the Resistance, now spread across multiple planets, was ready for total war. The trap was set. All they needed was the enemy to step into it. The Milvacs entered the system in perfect formation, their warships moving with cold, mechanical precision. They were used to easy victories, to crushing lesser civilizations, before they even had a chance to fight back. But humanity was different. Humanity had learned. The moment the first Dominion dreadnought crossed the outer asteroid belt, the battlefield ignited. From hidden positions, automated mass drivers fired, launching tungsten slugs at relativistic speeds. Entire enemy squadrons were torn apart before they even realized they were under attack. Mines detonated, sending shockwaves through the fleet. And from Mars, the Black Phoenix led the charge. "Full burn. We hit their carriers first," Rourke roared. The Black Phoenix and its escort fleet, a ragtag mix of stolen Milvac ships and retrofitted human warcraft, ripped through enemy formations. Plasma cannons thundered, missiles streaked through the void, and railgun slugs shattered enemy hulls. The Milvacs, though caught off guard, were not defenseless. Their dreadnoughts returned fire, sending waves of superheated plasma through the battlefield. The Vanguard ships weaved through the chaos, using their speed and knowledge of the system to outmaneuver the lumbering Dominion behemoths. Cole barked into the comms, "Vanguard strike teams, go." Across the battlefield, infiltration squads boarded Dominion capital ships, planting explosives and hijacking control systems. Human-hacked Milvacs warforms turned on their own, causing chaos within the enemy ranks. Rourke's ship dodged between wreckage, targeting the Milvacs command vessel. Getney a firing solution on their flagship. Vasquez locked in coordinates. Solution set. Firing. A full spread of railgun rounds and plasma torpedoes struck the enemy flagship's engines. The mighty vessel shuddered, flames erupting from its core. And then, from Earth's surface, the final blow came. An ancient nuclear warhead, fired from a long-forgotten silo, slamming into the crippled command ship. The explosion was blinding. The Tyrant fleet's command structure collapsed in an instant. Without centralized orders, the remaining Dominion ships panicked. And humanity, ruthless and relentless, hunted them down one by one. As the last Milvac ship burned in Sol's orbit, Rourke exhaled. It was over. The Tyrant fleet had fallen. The war was about to change. And for the first time in history, humanity wasn't just fighting for survival. It was fighting to win. The shattered remains of the Tyrant fleet drifted in the void, burning husks of once mighty warships. What had been the Dominion's instrument of absolute conquest was now nothing more than floating wreckage, a testament to human defiance. But victory was not enough. Survival was not enough. For too long, humanity had been on the defensive, reacting to the Milvax's every move. That ended today. The Unbroken Vanguard had a new mission, not just to resist, not just to survive, but to hunt. Rourke stood on the command deck of the Black Phoenix, staring at the holomap of the galaxy. "We know where they came from," he said, his voice cold, precise. "We know how they fight. Now, we take the war to them." The room was filled with veterans, Vanguard officers, resistance leaders, and the hardened survivors of a war that had nearly wiped out their species. None of them hesitated. Cole leaned forward. "We're talking about striking deep into Dominion space. No fallback, no reinforcements." Vasquez smirked. "That's what makes it fun." The plan was simple in its madness. The Dominion had assumed humanity was too broken to retaliate. Their fleets were still spread across the stars, subjugating other species, maintaining order across 1,000 systems. With the tyrant fleet gone, there was a gap in their defenses, a weakness that had never existed before, and the Vanguard would drive a dagger into it. Their first target, the Crucible. The Crucible was a Dominion war foundry, a massive orbital station where Milvax fleets were constructed, repaired, and deployed. If the Vanguard could destroy it, the Dominion's ability to replenish their losses would be crippled. The Black Phoenix led the assault, slipping past early warning beacons using stolen Dominion transponders. The moment they reached the Crucible, the trap was sprung. Rourke gave the order. "Burn it down." From the void, hidden human warships, now armed with reverse-engineered Dominion weapons, unleashed a devastating first strike. Railgun slugs punched through docking bays. Plasma torpedoes tore through fuel depots. The Crucible, once a symbol of Dominion might, became a blazing inferno. But the Milvax did not die easily. Automated defenses came online, turrets spitting fire into the darkness. Dominion warships scrambled to launch, swarming like a hive of enraged wasps. The battle turned into a brutal, close-quarters engagement, with Vanguard strike teams boarding the Crucible, planting explosives deep within its core. Cole led the charge inside, cutting through Milvax defenders with plasma rifles and repurposed Dominion warblades. Explosions shook the station as reactors began to overload. Vasquez's voice crackled over the comms. "Detonators set. You've got 2 minutes before this place turns into a second sun." Rourke's team barely made it back to the Black Phoenix before the Crucible erupted, a massive fireball tearing through orbit, sending shockwaves across the sector. As they watched the destruction unfold, Cole let out a low chuckle. "The Dominion's gonna feel that one. They'll feel the next one too," Rourke said, turning his gaze toward the stars. "Because we're not stopping." For the first time in history, humanity was not running. It was hunting. And the Dominion had nowhere to hide. The Crucible burned, its wreckage scattering through space, like the dying embers of a once invincible empire. The Dominion had ruled the stars for millennia, subjugating countless species under its iron grip. But today, for the first time, it knew fear. And humanity was the reason why. Across Dominion space, the effects of the Crucible's destruction rippled outward. Shipyards fell silent. Supply lines collapsed. Entire sectors turned to chaos as the Milvax struggled to respond to an enemy that fought without mercy, without hesitation, without fear. The Unbroken Vanguard did not conquer planets. They did not claim territory. They struck, they burned, and they vanished into the void, leaving nothing but destruction in their wake. And now they had set their sights on the heart of the Dominion itself. Prime Nexus, the capital world of the Milvax Dominion. Rourke stood on the Black Phoenix's bridge, staring at the holographic projection of the enemy homeworld. A planet-sized fortress, protected by orbital defense grids, automated battleships, and an atmosphere so thick with security drones that nothing had breached it in centuries. Cole exhaled. "You're insane if you think we can pull this off." Vasquez grinned. "Then it's a good thing we specialize in insanity." The plan was brutal in its efficiency. The Vanguard didn't need to defeat the Dominion in open battle. They just needed to break them. Rourke's voice was calm, steady. We cut off the head. We end them. The assault began in the dead of space. The Black Phoenix, leading a fleet of stolen Dominion warships, approached Prime Nexus using hijacked clearance codes. The orbital defenses didn't even register them as a threat until it was too late. In an instant, chaos erupted. Vanguard operatives, embedded deep within the Dominion's own ranks, sabotaged their systems from the inside. Shield generators overloaded. Defense platforms turned on each other. The fleet struck like a blade through soft flesh, cutting through Dominion strongholds with ruthless precision. And then the ground war began. Vanguard strike teams, equipped with stolen Milvax armor and weapons, stormed the capital city. Explosions shattered once pristine towers. Fires raged as Dominion forces scrambled to defend their last stronghold. But they weren't fighting broken rebels anymore. They were fighting soldiers who had learned, adapted, and evolved. Cole led the charge through the palace corridors, his plasma rifle glowing red-hot from continuous fire. Where's their leadership? Vasquez checked her scanner. Bunkered beneath the citadel. Cowards. Rourke pressed forward, cutting down the last of the Milvax defenders. They breached the final chamber, a massive war room filled with Dominion commanders, their once arrogant expressions twisted with disbelief and terror. One of them, a high-ranking warlord, took a step forward. You can't do this. You don't understand what you're unleashing. Without us, the galaxy will. Rourke leveled his weapon. The galaxy will be free. He pulled the trigger. With the Dominion's leadership dead, their empire collapsed overnight. The species they had enslaved rose in rebellion, tearing down the remnants of their former masters. And through it all, humanity stood victorious, not as conquerors, but as survivors who had defied extinction and turned the tide of history itself. As the fires of Prime Nexus burned behind them, Vasquez turned to Rourke. So what now? Rourke gazed at the stars, the endless possibilities stretching before them. Now, we rebuild, we explore, we thrive. Humanity had been broken. It had been beaten, but it had never surrendered. And now it would rise, stronger than ever. The war was over, and the future belonged to Earth.